Good morning. I want to thank everyone for making their time available for joining us on the call today. Let me start a screen share so we can see what we're talking about today. Can someone just put into chat that you can see my screen and hear me okay? Thanks, Lena. Thanks, David. Okay, so today we're going to talk about your personal relationship with time. And I know your time is precious, so I hope to offer you as much value as I can. I do want to encourage you as we go through the material to post questions in the Q&A or comments in chat. I'll spend about 45 minutes today talking you through the material I've prepared, and then we'll spend the remainder of the time answering what questions I can. So, do you ever feel like a hamster on a wheel? Or perhaps you have too many balls in the air? Or you're running around like a headless chicken? Sorry, that's a bit gruesome, that one. Or maybe it feels like you're constantly putting out fires. Or maybe you're constantly juggling time. Or maybe you have too much time on your hands. And it feels like a merry-go-round sometime, doesn't it? So many metaphors or euphemisms people use to describe the feeling of not having enough time. Well, today let's do a little bit to get off that merry-go-round. So some of you are looking at what looks like a vase, and others might see two heads in profile. And the point I'd like to make is time management is a bit of an illusion. What we actually manage is our priorities and how we allocate time against those priorities. So the time management plan is about how you might do a better job of that. And so what is time management? Well, Wikipedia has a very formal definition. Time management is the active process, planning and exercising, blah, blah, blah. A time management system is a designed combination of processes, tools, techniques, and methods. So today what I hope you'll be able to take away from this session is a little bit about the strategies of managing time, but more importantly, you go away with strategy on managing your time along with a few tactics to help implement those strategies. So that's what the outcome I'm hoping for us all today. So who am I? Well, I'm the founder and principal coach at Summit Scale Coaching. We coach small business owners across the world, typically in the 1 million to 10 million space, to dramatically grow their profits year on year, build effective teams to help run their businesses and get time back for themselves. I've coached in a wide range of sectors, including amongst others, agriculture, arts, healthcare, energy, professional services, real estate, construction, technology, and manufacturing. Formerly, I was the CEO of a group of 7 small to mid-sized companies and managed the combined revenue growth of 300% in a single year, and ultimately sold 2 of those companies for multi-million sums. Prior to that, I was the MD of a hyper-growth business unit that grew 2,000% in 8 years. And that time I led a team of 1,000 people operating in 23 cities and turned around a 400k loss to 11 million net operating profit in 2 years. And most importantly, I'm happily married to my wife Claire, of whom we're raising 2 teenage children and 1 chocolate Labrador. And if you're curious about the accent, being a Kiwi, I love my rugby and cricket. So here's a few examples of people I work with. Don't worry too much about the comments in the middle. They're just there so you can see that it's not just my mum that are saying some nice things about me. And I'd invite you to visit my website and check out some of what people are saying. Many of them are people just like you, I would think. So Gavin is a serviced accommodation specialist based in London, catering to the corporate travel market. John, he provides specialist high voltage components to electricity substations and infrastructure. Petra and Ella, Sisters Grimm, they're a theatrical dance production company with a Grammy-nominated show. Rob at Dr. Bronner's, they provide organic healthcare products. So traditional sorts of bricks and mortar businesses, often manufacturing, retail and construction, and in different parts of the world. Nahal here in India, and Arye and his disruptive technology platform in New York. So you can see they come from a wide variety of industry sectors and varying stages in development of their business. So our goal for today is to have some BFOs. That's blinding flashes of the obvious. That's often accompanied with a kind of a smack in the forehead as you realise just how obvious it is. But that's the thing about a BFO. It is we only see them as obvious after they've become apparent to us. So my goal for us today is that you have a number of BFOs. So time is our most precious resource. Time is more valuable than money. You can get more money, but you cannot get more time. That's Jim Rohn. Once you've spent your money, you can always make some more. Once you spend your time, you can't get it back. So here's the thing. You equal your calendar. The results you get today are a perfect reflection of how you spend your time. If you're happy with the results you're getting, great. It means that you're using your time in the most productive way. If you're not, it's by definition means that you have to do something about how you spend your time. Because ultimately, you are your calendar, and your calendar never lies. And so the proposition for today is, if you're happy with your results, awesome. If you'd like some different results in one or more areas of your business, then something about your calendar or something about how you use your time has to change. So coming back on the loop, your personal relationship with time, there are three general areas of where we sometimes fall apart when it comes to how we use our time. So the first level is those technical things, like, well, examples include tasks have no home, you've set aside the wrong time, you've miscalculated the amount of time the task takes, you're the wrong person for the job, tasks are more complex than you wanted, can't remember what you have to do, your space is disorganized. So those are just some of the things that are relatively easily fixed. Maybe there's some of our external realities. Examples could include, maybe you have an unrealistic workload, maybe you have a health problem that's limiting your energy, perhaps you're in transition, you're in a interruption-rich environment, and I bet everyone here would especially feel that way, especially if you're in a service-based business and you feel like you have to respond to the emails or phone calls or posts that come from your clients. Or perhaps you have a disorganized partner and that disorganization is creeping into your life. And there are some psychological obstacles. You have unclear goals and priorities. You're a conquistador of chaos. You have a fear of downtime. You have a fear of failure or a fear of success. You have a fear of completion or of change. You have a need for perfection. That perfect sales presentation holds us back from doing our sales pitches. You have a fear of losing creativity. So a lot of this comes from Stephen Covey's great book, First Things First. I'd recommend not just this book, but also the other one, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. So Stephen Covey says that there's been 3 generations of time management. In other words, how time management has evolved. The first of which was managing a task list or a to-do list and making sure everything you needed to do was on that list. Then we evolved and started using personal organisers. We walked around with something in our pocket or purse and kept a record of what we were attempting to do and how we booked out our time. And the third generation is this one that's organised around roles and values, and that's the one I want to unpack a little bit more today. So Covey talks about the clock of scheduling, for example, people to see, meetings to make, versus the compass of purpose and values. And you can see Porsche here has this watch here with one part of it's a clock and the other part's a compass. So our dilemma as we move through time is characterised by this actual real watch, which on one hand we've got the clock of scheduling, stuff to do, meetings to make, and on the other hand we've got the compass of purpose and values. What's our North Star? What are we aiming at? What are we looking to achieve over the longer course of time? So the clock of scheduling versus the compass of that purpose and values. And also, life is like a high wire act, the tightrope walker carrying his balancing beam. On one hand, you have all the things you need to get done today, or this hour, or this week, or this year. On the other hand, time manages about what you want to get done over the next 5 years, what you want to get out of your business, your career, what do you want to get out of life. So in any given day, in any given week, that's the challenge. You have a big bucket on one hand of this balancing beam, and that's the total sum of our to-dos, our tasks, our meetings we have with team or clients or the prospects we'd like to meet. And then on the other hand, what we want to do in 5 years' time. And the stuff on the left is all important and urgent, but often the total sum of accomplishing that over time doesn't necessarily add up to anything. And that's why we have to have a view of the right-hand side of our balancing beam, where we have a longer-term view past this year, and in fact, even before I die. And one way to think about this is if you were to write your own eulogy, and you can imagine has someone near and dear to you might write that you are a terrific person, you had accomplished great things, that you had a great family and partnership, etc. And so the thought today is, what do I have to do? How do I have to live? So that when my eulogy is pronounced, it's real and it's accurate, and that's the big dilemma. That's the big paradox. That's the big fight we have every day, figuring out how to balance those two priorities. So first things first, what's the purpose of your business? Why do we have a business? How many times people think, well, to achieve net profit, or to accomplish some great goals, or to keep people employed, or to bring something to market. But for today, I'm offering you this definition. The purpose of our business is to give us the life we want. The purpose of your business is to give the life you want. Now, I know for sure that when you're expressing this to your clients, your employees, your investors, your bank manager, this isn't how you're going to express it. But personally, inside of us, that's what we want. Our business is meant to give us the life, give us our life, and we weren't born to do business. We were born to live. And so one of the propositions that I'd like to make is this, that if we want to live our life, then our business has to support that life. And so first, let's define our life so that we can then build and shape the business that's going to give us that life. So we start with the idea of what is the life that we want. The second half of the question is about you. And Dr. Seuss put it lovely when he said, "Today you are you, that's truer than true. No one's alive that's youer than you." And my question then for you is, what is the perfect you? Do you have a written definition of who you are, who you're becoming, who you are at your best? What set of beliefs will you have? What sort of human being will you be? And so those aren't the two big aims that we have as entrepreneurs, as business people, to become the best person, the best thing, where you can be, and to build the business gives us a life. So if we accept that definition, then time management starts with the big question of what we want out of our life. And here I'm offering one way to think about that, and that's an exercise called the Wheel of Life. The Wheel of Life is a simple but really powerful tool that helps you visualize all the important areas of your life at once. And it's often used to give a bird's eye view of your life by looking at a visual representation of all the areas of your life at once. The wheel helps you to better understand which of your life areas are flourishing and which ones need the most work. So, for example, with your finance in your life, though, through your level of wealth, your level of income, how you define that on a scale of 1 to 10. And on personal growth, are you closer to 1 or closer to 10? And on health, are you currently closer to 1 or closer to 10? And as you go all the way around and mark that for yourself, when you get around to the end, often when people then connect the dots as they go from one role to the next role to the next role, for most people what comes out is a very jagged looking wheel. And that gives us a pretty good visualization of what your life looks like. Not as round, full and complete as this one, but jagged, out of balance, out of alignment. And so one thing you might want to do as an exercise to get back on track is that would have to happen. Ask yourself this question. So then in a year's time, or even just in 90 days time, you could be able to come back and do this exercise and express or be able to report that you're at a level of satisfaction. So at the minimum, what you might like to do is identify which 3 roles you're most unsatisfied with are, and at least the least satisfying, and which are the most important to you, and what would you have to do? What goals, what results would you have to achieve in order to be able to report satisfaction in 90 days or 3 months or in 12 months, for example, even 5 years? So that gives us a bit of a better picture of what our life is supposed to be, and gives you a way to think about how to file a navigation plan for your life. For lots of people, it's true that they spend more time planning their holidays than they do planning their life. Another way that this can be done is a thing called the vision board, and there's a lot of different ways to do that. And again, I encourage you to Google it. And in this particular example, someone's used a chalkboard and written out some of the important things that they are going to make their ideal, this perfect life expressed on the board. So, see, there's a dollar sign there, and that says, create a mobile app, make millions, or win the lotto. Probably the more realistic, or become a wine connoisseur or a market brand, etc. That's how this person has defined that for themselves. There's no right way to do it. Here's another example. Someone's kind of used this scheme to organize themselves and create a life vision. One of the tools we use in our coaching system is the Vision Book. Most people use a PowerPoint slide deck to create it. An example of here's an example really of what a Vision Book looks like. Most mornings I spend a few moments contemplating my Vision Book to stay in a resourceful mental state. We must remind ourselves frequently of the future we want to have and stay focused on our vision and goals. We don't focus on money because money is simply a means to an end. We focus on the things we're living for. We find it one of the most powerful tools that you'll ever use to keep yourself focused on what matters in your life. So there you go, some ideas around that. So shifting away from that and back into how we then use time in order to accomplish these things. The centerpiece of managing time is Covey's matrix. The matrix breaks down the things that we do with our day into 4 quadrants. You have important things and not important things, and you have things that are urgent and not urgent. And the combination of these 2 criteria make up these 4 quadrants. In a moment, I'm going to go into a bit more detail of each of the quadrant, but let me start with the metaphor of the right-hand drive car. So in the front seat of this car, on the left, quadrant 1, we have the urgent and important things. On the right, quadrant 2, behind the steering wheel, we have the not urgent and important things. But this is the driving seat of the accomplishments in our lives. In the rear left, we have quadrant 3, the urgent and not important things. And in the right quadrant 4, the not urgent and not important things. Another way to look at these 4 quadrants is these. Quadrant 1 is the upper left is the quadrant of necessity. Quadrant 2, the one on the right, is the quadrant of quality and leadership. And quadrant 3, the bottom left, is the quadrant of deception. That's the delusional stuff, the stuff that keeps you busy but it's not really productive. And quadrant 4, the bottom right, is the quadrant of waste. So let's have a look at these in a bit more detail. So most business owners spend the majority of their time in quadrant 1, urgent, important, the quadrant of necessity. And where they are actually working, on truly important things in their business that are urgently pressing on them to get done, all that stuff that happens to us every day. These are the crises, the pressing problems with employees or clients or orders and projects that need to get done. Firefighting, putting out fires and taking care of emergencies, major scrap work and rework on things that needed to be done and out yesterday, and deadline-driven projects. So most business owners spend most of their time taking care of these things, urgent and important for the health of their business. And a lot of businesses also spend their time doing things that are in quadrant 3, urgent but not important, the quadrant of deception. These are things that are not important but seem urgent, usually because they are other people's priorities, and so they include interruptions, when somebody with a strong personality comes in and interrupts us, certain phone calls that come at you like they're urgent but are really not that important in the scheme of things, some mails, some reports, some meetings that you have to attend. I'm going to do some things like I'm going to do some social media marketing, and then we find ourselves going down a rabbit hole of Facebook, and where we start off with the idea that we're doing some marketing. Pretty soon then we're wondering about somebody's new baby or what someone did on holiday last week, and we end up a long way from the original intention of doing some marketing. So a lot of business owners will spend time doing these things that seem urgent but really not important. And then you have this whole category of quadrant 4, not urgent and not important. This is the quadrant of waste, basically time wasting. Again, a lot of business owners waste time doing trivial things, busy work, junk mail, phone calls that are time wasters, basically vocational time that you waste. Mine can be TV, watching mindless TV shows. I've been guilty of watching plenty of mindless TV shows. But where you want to spend the majority of time is in quadrant 2, important and not urgent, the quadrant of quality and personal leadership. That's the driving seat. This is the stuff that is important to the business but not necessarily urgent. In other words, no one is holding a gun to the business owner's head, making them do things that are basically amount to preventative maintenance in some cases. Things like budgeting and forecasting, like investing in important relationships so they have the strength when the relationship comes under pressure, like marketing and sales, like new account development, like educating him or herself as a business owner. These are all the kinds of things that prevent fires down the road that become urgent. And production capability activities are increased by doing these things of reorganizing new opportunities, planning, recreation. Recreation is another way of saying recreation, and basically means you're recreating your space. When you don't spend enough time on prevention and proactive things to grow the business, manage it, and take care of your business, you'll end up with more crises and firefighting. So the goal here is to help you understand that time is a valuable asset, and if you can discipline yourself to spend more and more time in quadrant 2, it will actually minimize the time you're forced to spend in quadrant 1. This is the side of our lives that says if you don't know where you're going, any road will do. If you don't have an outcome or a picture of what your perfect life would be, it's in this quadrant that we work it out. So the preparation, planning, prevention, values clarification, etc. Abraham Lincoln was quoted as saying, "Give me 6 hours to chop down a tree and I'll spend the first 4 sharpening the axe." Or Albert Einstein said, "If I have an hour to solve a problem, I'd spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem and 5 minutes thinking about the solutions." And Covey talks about sharpening the saw, but here's the interesting thing about the way it works, and this is the critical point you as a business owner have to understand, is that the more time you spend in quadrant 2, the less time you will spend in quadrant 1. And I'll say that again. The more time you spend in quadrant 2, the less time you'll have to spend in quadrant 1. The better we get on the right hand side, the easier it is to manage the left hand side. And as you can see, we manage the urgent and important, focus on the important and non-urgent, avoid the urgent and non-important, and limit the non-urgent and non-important. So again, for emphasis, this quadrant of quality and personal leadership directly impacts how easy or hard it is to manage that quadrant of necessity. And I think that's Stephen Covey's way of saying how we manage the balancing beam on the high wire act. The better we get on the right hand side, the easier it is to manage the left hand side. So some time management keys. We've been talking strategy, so let me give you some tactics. So the first question you have to ask yourself as you're thinking about time management is, what results matter to you most? What results mattered to me most this week? What results matter to me most in 5 years? What is the appropriate thing for me to be doing today so that 5-year things become accomplishable? It's always there as a tension. There's always a priority competing between those two ends. Sometimes it's more on the left, sometimes it's more on the right. But the question you always want to start with is, what results matter to me most? And then falls activity. What do I have to do to produce those results? What kinds of things is going to get me a new client? What kinds of things are going to get me a relationship or a personal relationship that I'm happy with? The relationship with my friends, my family. What other things I have to do in order to produce those real results? And then the next question, of course, is how much? How many phone calls do I have to make, or do I get to make? How much would I like to visit with my family, my partner, my friends? We then have to book out some time, but as the saying goes, the missing link in goal achievement is scheduling. The danger here is many people are really good at figuring out the first 3 of these, but don't block out the time to get it done. Instead, they operate in a world of, well, when I get round to it. And all of us have had that experience that knows that we never get round to it because it's not out in our calendar. It's just won't get done. And then finally, the fifth thing, maybe the hardest thing, is integrity. In the moment when it comes to that time, 10 o'clock on a Wednesday, when you said, I'm going to eat that frog or do something that is tough for me to do, like make some prospecting calls, you have to have some integrity in that moment. And we get to pay either one of 2 pains all the time: the pain of discipline or the pain of disappointment. The pain of discipline of doing it in the moment, or the pain of disappointment in not getting the results that we want for ourselves this week or in 5 years' time, or whatever time frame you're thinking about. So those are the big keys. And when you do that, you'll have a calendar that looks like this. This is a typical default calendar. Default calendar is more about the how the plan of how we're going to spend our time. So this is my calendar in the early days of starting as a business coach. I had about 50% of my time on business development with marketing, networking and phone prospecting in the mornings, client delivery on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday afternoons, more business development with complimentary coaching sessions and email and admin at the beginning and end of the day, and bookkeeping and admin at the end of the week. And so the default calendar answers those questions. What results do I want? What activity produces those results? How much of those activities? When am I going to do it? And then finally, of course, having integrity in the moment. When it turns 8:30 on Monday and it says phone fun and now it's time to do some phone prospecting, that's in fact what I'm going to do. So whether it's sales and marketing, working on budgets, going out and developing new strategic partnerships to bring in new clients, whatever it is you have recognized that you need to do, stuff you might have been procrastinating about or just not doing, you now build into your default calendar, and that gives you context to hold yourself accountable for getting these things done. And here's another example of default diary, in this case of a freelance branding manager. As you can see, she color-coded her work into chunks of different style of work that she was doing. And it still answers the same kinds of questions. What's the most important results you need to achieve? What do you need to do in order to get that result? How much time is necessary? And then how do you block out your time so that your time or how you use your calendar maps out to the way that you've described your priorities. So some more productivity techniques. So first is plan your day and week before you start. The most productive time, I urge you really to consider this. The most productive time you can have in a week is 20 minutes that you spend on a Sunday with your balance beam, organizing your week, thinking about what other things I have to get done this week and what are some of the things I can do this week to get closer to my 5-year goals, my lifelong goals, etc. To make that, to use, your 20 minutes, that 20 minutes will amplify or sharpen that act so that when you apply it and through the rest of your week, you'll do with a higher level of effectiveness. The best time to plan your day is the day before. So tonight, before you finish your day, think about your day tomorrow and plan your day tomorrow. There's really a couple of reasons for this, and that's why it works. First, when you start your day tomorrow, you'll land in your office or in your day with your feet on the ground and already starting. You're not asking yourself, oh my gosh, what am I supposed to get done today? You're in fact effective and productive right from the get-go. And perhaps even more interesting thing is that when you plan your day before it starts, your subconscious doesn't sleep. That's how our heart and lungs continue to operate even when we're asleep. And in fact, when you program your subconscious, when you declare, here's my list of things that I want to get done tomorrow, you have told your self-conscious to process that list through the night, even while you're sleeping. So how many times have you woken up in the middle of the night or woken up first thing in the morning and have a clearer picture about one or two of the problems that you were struggling with the day before? And if that's ever happened to you, then that's happened because you had that on your mind when you went to sleep in the morning, and in the morning your brain has offered you the solution. And so you can do that in an organized way if you choose to spend 10 minutes before the end of the day to apply yourself to the next day. Secondly is focus. Ask yourself the question, what's the highest and best use of your time? In real estate and property, we're always asking the question, what's the best and highest use of your land? And so focus on the highest investment use and the most significant thing that you can do. And I'm going to offer you a tool to think about that in a minute. Thirdly, manage. Learn to manage and terminate your phone calls. And as an example, if you have your computer or device has a notification sound, an indication of any kind that you've received a new email, then you no longer have control of your agenda. If your phone rings, makes a sound, or is vibrating, then in fact you've lost control of the phone, of your phone and email. And what I mean by this, we're most effective when we chunk our time into 2-hour blocks, chunk our time into 2 hours of activity against a particular objective. And that, when we take an interruption, it takes about 20 minutes to return to the same level of focus and productivity as we had before we took that interruption. So before we noticed the ding of that email or before we took that phone call. And so in a 2-hour chunk, if you took take 3 interruptions, you've lost a full hour of high level productivity. Now, I can anticipate some of you thinking, well, geez, I have to be responsive to my clients. I have to be responsive to people in my world. And yes, you do. That's absolutely true. And many of us have a very demanding interruption-rich environment. And Here's what I would propose and suggest you do. If you were to leave an outgoing message on your voicemail that sounds like this: "Hi, it's Shane. Thanks for your call. I return calls at 11 a.m., 1 and 4 p.m. and I'll return your call at the closest to one of those three times." And virtually everyone will respect that. So you've set some boundaries. People will respect those boundaries, and then in fact respect you because they understand that you're a highly effective, highly organized, highly productive person. And as long as you keep that promise and in fact do make the return call at 11 as I suggested, or and put 15 minutes into your calendar, then people will come to respect you more for it. So learn to control the phone and the email. Turn off the phone so it doesn't ring. Make the phone a servant of you rather than you a servant of your phone constantly. Moving on, concentrate. So on key tasks, stay on them until they're 100% done. And in a minute, I'm going to unpack a little bit further, and then delegate all lower value tasks and that can be done by someone else in a lower income or salary. And I'm going to show you how to do that in a moment as well. So here's something Tom Peters suggests. Have you in the last 30 days examined in detail, hour by hour, your calendar to evaluate the degree time actually spent, mirrors your espoused priorities, and repeated this exercise with everyone on your team? So let me give you a way to do that. Anyone who wants this, feel free to send me an email and I'll send you this little template out too. But for a week, keep track and as finite as a chunk as you can. Solicitors and lawyers say they keep track of their time by tenth of an hour. So that means every 6 minutes they can tell you what they've been doing or who they've been charging for that time. If that's a bit onerous for you, I'm thinking 15 minutes or even 30-minute chunks, and put them in as much detail as you can, what you've been doing for 30 minutes for the full course of the week. And then take an audit, take a survey on how you currently are spending your time. And I promise you, I've asked clients to do this, and many times when we look and reflect back on how they're spending time, it's not often pretty. Often it's been embarrassing. It's been embarrassing for me. It's been embarrassing for my clients as I work through this, but it's been very enlightening as well. It's really helped to highlight when they're most productive. And in fact, we could be more productive. So once you've made a record of how you spend your time over a week, I'm going to invite you to do this little thing called the Value Fun Matrix. And this is a useful tool that helps you classify tasks based on how much value they have and how much fun they are. And the Value Fun Matrix is predicated on the notion that a business owner is making the best contribution to their business when they are adding as much value as possible and having the most fun doing it. So let's explore this framework a bit more deeply. So the value of a task is purely economical in nature. So the value of a task and how much it would cost to get the task done on an hourly basis by hiring someone to do it is really not, it's really not that hard to do. How much, value a business owner is contributing to a business when doing a certain task, because salary data for a given role is, readily available online. Now, the idea of fun is predicated on the notion that when any of us find doing certain tasks, have fun doing certain tasks, that's a huge indicator that we're in our sweet spot. So when we're in our sweet spot, we're making exactly use of our natural wiring, so to speak. So when leveraging our strengths and making the highest and best use of who we are, there is a lot of sophisticated tools out there that we can use to measure our strengths. But when we find a task that is fun and do it, that's a simple and good indication that we've had our sweet spot. And when we're in our sweet spot, we're going to be producing better quality work, which is good for us and our business. So let's just have a look at these quadrants in detail. So tasks in quadrant 1 are those that are low in value and low value. These tasks have and low fun tasks, and these tasks have the lowest score as a business owner. And you obviously want to spend as little time in this quadrant as possible. So that's admin work, that's bookkeeping, etc. Someone will do that work, a personal assistant, a virtual assistant, an organizer. Lots of that work can be done by someone else, and you have lots of resources, your accountant, other people in your world that can help you get some of that stuff done. And for every hour that you pull out of that low value, low fun and apply it to the high value, high fun, you're getting significant increase in profitability. You'll be replacing £20 hours, let's say, with £200 hours. And that's a significant shift in the value of a business. You also get value, in fact, because you're going away from work you hate to do and doing work you love, employing someone to do it. And even if you're fully booked and can't take on any more clients, well, then you have both time and money freedom. You're free to choose. You have all the money that you need or want, so that you then free to choose how you spend your time. And if you do that in terms of enriching your lifestyle, that's perfectly fine as well. Quadrant 2 tasks are a lot of fun, but since they don't create a lot of value for the business, they still shouldn't be the main focus of the business owner. So it's better to have fun doing higher value tasks and offload Quadrant 2 tasks. And for example, social media marketing for a lot of people is high fun, but it's low value. So Quadrant 3 tasks are less fun, but are full of value to the business. These tasks are important because they add value to the business, whether or not the business owner particularly enjoys doing them. Sometimes business owners just need to buckle down and get these tasks done. For example, phone prospecting for some people is low fun, but can be high value in converting leads to sale. It takes a lot of effort to get through that. Having said that, sometimes many of these tasks can be delegated to an apprentice or someone else, and this should be done really wherever possible. And that brings us to Quadrant 4, which has the best of both worlds. It adds a lot of value and also a lot of fun. These tasks are obviously the most ideal task for the business owner to be doing, the ones the business owner will enjoy the most and also see the most reward from doing. So, for example, meeting with a client where we have a high hourly charge out rate. So that's adding significant value, producing activity in our business. And it's also something that's fun. So take your list of tasks and rank those tasks based on which quadrant they fall into. Quadrant 1 tasks all grouped together, Quadrant 2 tasks grouped together, and so forth. What we're looking to do is use our time in a way that gives us the best life we want and invest in the business we want. And so this is an exercise that I encourage you to think about doing: an audit of your time, survey your time, and then allocate it into the value fund matrix. Doing an analysis of what's the highest value work, what's the lowest value work, and then ask yourself, how can I get more high value work than in my business and have someone else to do the low value. So another thing you might want to think about is multitasking is worse than a lie. Multitasking is worse than a lie. Lots of people feel like they're fantastic multitaskers. And in fact, multitasking is a myth. We're not. What we're actually doing when we're multitasking is a thing called switch tasking. And there's an exercise in this book, The Myth of Multitasking by Dave Crenshaw, and what he asks you to do is to time yourself to write the phrase, multitasking is worse than a lie. But instead of writing that out in one continuous phrase, write it this way. Write the letter M, then write a number 1, U and 2, L and 3, T and 4. And so we're alternating a letter and a number all the way through. And usually when I ask a client to do that, it usually takes about 1 minute and 20 seconds or thereabouts. And then I'll ask the client to do a second version of this. And that's where they go and write strictly in one go, multitasking is worse than a lie. And in one go, the numbers over many years, 27 letters, and it typically takes about half the time, sometimes a little less than that. And what people often recognize and feel is just how much confusion gets created in our brain as our brain jumps back and forth, switch tasks between writing a letter, writing a number, writing a letter, writing a number. And if you're scoffing at me and saying, no, you're a great multitasker, I challenge you to get someone to take you through this exercise. And if you're interested, I'll send you the instructions and you can have some fun if it's the kind of fun party game that you like. So multitasking is worse than lying. Multitasking is a myth. The best way, to I'm most productive when we chunk our time against our activity. And then Tom Peters on the delusion of multitasking. Today's technology tool gives you great opportunities to do 73 things at a time, or at least delude yourself that you are. I see managers who look like 12-year-olds with attention deficit disorder running around from one thing to the next, constantly barraged with information, constantly chasing the next shiny thing. And so they state the obvious, but often in our all we have is our time. The way we spend our time is our priorities, and the way we spend our time is our strategy. It's not what you say it is, it's what actually occurs, what is in fact on your calendar, what you actually did. So your calendar knows precisely what you really care about, says Tom Peters. And my question for you today is, does your calendar match with your stated priorities? So Peter Drucker, if there's any one secret to effectiveness, it's concentration. Effective executives do first things first, and they do one thing at a time. He was before Tom Peters. First things first and one thing at a time. So let's consider it's time for a change. Now, what I'd offer to you is this thing called the formula for change, and it's a bit of arithmetic. Again, I'd offer to you, if you're interested in doing a little bit of research on it, just Google the phrase formula for change. So D stands for dissatisfaction, times V for vision, plus first steps, and that has to be greater than the resistance. And so it looks like a scales of justice, where the left-hand side, dissatisfaction times vision plus first steps, has to be greater than or heavier or outweigh our resistance for us to make a move. And so let me unpack that for a minute. Another way to describe dissatisfaction is pain. Another way to describe vision is pleasure. So if you ask yourself which one of these two is most motivating, pain more often motivates than vision. Which of the two has a greater upside? Well, vision has a greater upside. There's no limitation to vision except our imagination. So those two combined, and sometimes we have those two, but we don't know how to get started. We don't know how to eat an elephant. We don't know how to climb Mount Everest except to take the first step. And so sometimes what holds us back is we're not clear. We don't have a clear picture of a path forward. And so resistance will continue to exist unless we have clarity and can see a path forward. And so again, that stuff on the left-hand side has to outweigh the stuff on the right. And so that means that we have to get beyond our comfort zone, because beyond our comfort zone is where all the magic happens. And if you think about your comfort zone, think anything outside your comfort zone is your growing zone. Anything past our comfort zone is where we start to grow. And anything inside your comfort zone is our dying zone. And let me ask you just to imagine for a minute, you're at the edge of your comfort zone. We feel by definition uncomfortable. And if that causes us to retreat from the edges, then in fact that it just shrinks back with us towards the center. And so anything in nature is either growing or dying. So quick story, I'm a pretty avid skier. As a teenager growing up in the South Island of New Zealand, I would play rugby on a Saturday and ski on a Sunday. I was a good skier. I would ski with my buddies, and we used to go on all kinds of locations because we always wanted to ski on fresh powder and stuff like that. And then I moved to the UK, and so for 5 years I never got to ski. And finally, when I did get to ski again and some skiing buddies in France, I had this discovery where, oh my gosh, the sort of places that I used to go so comfortably now, where I couldn't ski comfortably. Now I was scared. My comfort zone had shrunk. So on the other side of that, though, is that if we grow too far, we'll pass our growing zone. We go into a panic zone. And if we go too far beyond that, we go into a danger zone. And when we experience a danger zone, that's when we shut down. That's when we don't have the means, the capacity, the mental wherewithal to be capable of driving ourselves forward. We are a danger to ourselves. So how does that all influence us? Well, let me introduce to you a guy called Ilya Prigogine, who was awarded one of these, a Nobel Prize, because he discovered and described this equation here. And the key part of this thing is called the maximization reverse, the maximization of entropy. And so entropy is the idea of, colloquially we know it as, everything in nature grows and then dies. And so this Nobel Prize was that you could reverse the effects of entropy. And a word he coined for this was perturbation. Through perturbation, you're going to reverse the effects of entropy. And as you can see, the root word of perturbation is perturb. And the way this principle works is that if you apply enough pressure to a substance in a contained space, you can even reverse the effects of entropy. In other words, instead of coal turning to coal dust, you could in fact apply enough pressure on it and it would become a diamond. So a form of carbon becomes another form of carbon. And so how does perturbation apply to us as humans? Well, how it applies to us is we're going to use this metaphor of a pot boiling water. And perturbation is heat. And here's you, and you're feeling some pressure. Something is pressing you, and in this case turning up the heat on the water, we'll see that the surface of the water pop, and then we'll see some steam emote, and in humans it's emotion. And so if we were to have a breakthrough, we want to have a bit of pressure, we want to feel a little uncomfortable. And so if I could offer a suggestion to you, rather than shying away from pressure, embrace it. It's a necessary prerequisite to growth. Perturbation and that feeling of discomfort is a sign that you're getting ready to grow, and that's something to embrace. Now, I won't say that that feels good. It doesn't, but it's something to embrace. So, Stephen Covey says the key to the ability to change is a changeless sense of who you are, what you are about, and what you value. And that's like a guiding light of your lighthouse or the guiding light of your North Star. Omar Bradley said it like this: it's time that we steered by the stars, not by the lights of each passing ship. So there you have it, a little bit of time management from Dr. Seuss and Stephen Covey and Peter Drucker, Keith Cunningham, Tom Peters and Ilya Prigogine and Omar Bradley, and a bit of an assist from me. So I'd like you to put your questions. In the next few minutes we're going to have a Q&A. I'll just tell you a little bit about how we can help, and then we'll go on to the Q&A. So please start popping in your questions if you haven't already. So here's the thing about coaching. Lots of people think business coaching is about business coaching, the systems, the tools, the strategies, the financial plans, the money marketing, the business. But the other thing about coaching, it's about performance, and that's part of I can't do your push-ups. I can help you do push-ups, and you'll do better quality push-ups. Roger Federer has a coach. Why does the best tennis player in the world have a coach? Because he wants to be better. And do you have to be the best tennis player in the world to be the best coach for the best player in the world? No. The most important part of coaching, though, is this part. Most business problems are personal problems in disguise. When it all comes together, that's your happy result. So just while you're popping in your questions at the same time, if you think about think about that, or thinking about some of the things that I've talked about, and like to see how that applies to you, then feel free to go online and schedule a confidential 15-minute call at timewithshane.com. If it feels like a potential fit, we'll go ahead and block out a 90-minute session. We can explore what's going on for you and your business. Complimentary, of course. There's no charge for you, because we both want to see what it's all about. Are we a fit? Could we possibly work together? You're probably wondering, is this all worth it? But also, I can give you a guarantee. My guarantee is that you'll agree after 4 months that coaching has paid for itself, and you even get to define by what measure, by what standard. So if you're thinking coaching is kind of risky, let me take the risk off the table. I know there's no risk. I've worked with many, many clients. None of them have actually claimed that guarantee, and here's the deal with that. You have to give me a guarantee as your coach. I'm on the sidelines. You're the owner. You're on the playing field. If you're not showing up on the playing field, I can't help you from the sidelines. So if you complete the assignments you've agreed to, I'll never tell you to do something. It's something you've agreed to do, then and I know it's going to pay off. The truth is coaching really works. So let's have a look at the questions. So question here: what do you suggest to people who have service professions that are completely client-driven, like property agents, where all of a sudden you have to drop everything you're doing, do a viewing with a potential buyer or appraisal with a seller, all that sort of stuff? How do you sort of try and plan around that? Well, the first thing you have to ask yourself is to contemplate some perspective. Ultimately, you view your relationship to time will govern your relationship with other people. So yes, there is an expectation that you're available to your clients. I have various types of property agents as clients, as well as designers and architects who are constantly in demand. And if you subject yourself or allow yourself to be, then you will be available all the time, 24/7 to your clients. And if on the other hand, you respectfully say, here are the times I'm available, here's when I'm not available, most people will respect that. And anytime you have a conversation that outlines your expectations, well, in fact, let me be clear on this. When's the best time to deal with a problem? Most people will say when it occurs. And in fact, I would say before it ever happens. So the best time as a property agent or a designer or a professional in the service business, the best time to contemplate this question is right there before the initial engagement. And you might use the example as the property agent. You might say, I'm with you, Mr. or Mrs. Client. I'm with you at this moment. You can see, you probably can't see it, my phone is shut off at the moment. I'm not available at the moment to anyone else except you. Would you like me to respect that as far as you're concerned? Yes, of course you would. Well, then it's okay if I treat my other clients in the same way. And so then you can strike a bargain if you express it in terms that are meaningful to them. And for example, you're with a client and you took 3 or 4 phone calls during that period. Well, you spend an hour with that client. I can virtually promise you that you won't have that client for very long, because the client recognize that they're playing second fiddle. So it's about establishing priorities, establishing boundaries, negotiating expectations together. And it's not a perfect world. As some of you are rolling your eyes and saying, well, he's in la la land. No question, it's demanding. I would say, though, that it's a lot less demanding than you might expect if you shifted the way that you think about your time and what's reasonable for others to have as expectations of your view. And if you couch it in the language of expectations for them and how they'd like to be treated, those same people will respect you and your other clients at the same time. It's all those interruptions that are urgent but not important, for sure. So if you're sitting with a client and you're starting to do email, you'd be insane to do that. And so if it's fair to do an email or paying attention to something else while you're with a client, then by definition that means that's going to be other occasions where you're not available. So you can still demonstrate client responsiveness. The example I gave, your voicemail message might say something like, thanks for your call. As I spend a lot of time during the day with the clients, I return calls at 10 a.m., 2 p.m. and 4 p.m., whatever. That can still demonstrate response. As long as you fulfill those obligations and do return your calls at those times, you can demonstrate responsiveness. And so this is an example for service professionals that live, with that demand. They will be at the edge of their comfort zone. They will be in perturbation as they attempt to make that shift, as they shift over to taking more control of their time and shifting their expectations for themselves, and then in turn the expectation that others will have of them. So, back to that slide where Covey said this: the key to the ability to change is a changeless sense of who you are, what you're about, and what you value. So start with that. Do you value others more than you value yourself? Well, if that's the case, then you're always going to be a victim of someone pulling your chain, and it costs. There's a comment here in respect to that discussion. Generally true, but if you have a high revenue client, you might want to make an exception. There are always exceptions. Well, let me offer this analogy, and it's a bit of a story with a bit of colour, but it'll make the point. So a very wealthy businessman sees a beautiful, stunning woman on the corner and approaches and says, would you go to bed for me for £1 million? The indecent proposal movie. And the woman thinks about it for a minute and says, yeah, I'll go to bed with you for £1 million. And then the business then says, well, would you go to bed for me for £100? And the woman says, £100? What do you think I am? And to which the businessman says, well, we've established what you are. I just need to know what the price. So if a £1 million client means more to you than a £100 client, and you're willing to compromise or conduct yourself differently, then that's fine. But just recognise that you're changing, and that you're willing on the other hand to tolerate some of the other things that are going to exist in your life. Things like stress and urgency and feeling a loss of control because others are dominating what you're doing or dominating the things that you pay attention to. So I'm being a bit hard-nosed or blunt about it, but I do appreciate that there's a balancing act, and lots of times we're aligned and it's working, and sometimes it isn't. And then I hope that I've offered you some ways to at least consider how to rethink and reevaluate what your top priorities are and how they fill your time and how your time gets aligned so that you achieve those things. Another question. I find I'm always in the important and urgent mode all the time, always putting out fires. Can you give me some tip here? So, well, that's the hamster and the wheel strategy, isn't it? The hamster strategy for getting more done and running faster, and eventually the hamster dies from fatigue, and that's that quadrant, left front passenger seat of the car, of the urgent important, which then becomes tyrannical. It's tyranny. It's so relentless, it's demanding, it'll suck up all of your time if we let it. So the shift that has to occur is not so much the stuff that occupies that time, it's the relationship we have with that stuff. We've talking about your personal relationship with time. If you want to see a shift, it's that time. It isn't so much what's in the time; it's how much you think. It's how you think about it, and therefore, as a result, you'll be thinking some of the stuff someone else has to be doing, because that stuff in the right-hand driver's seat of the side is more meaningful, more important. It's going to lead to a more productive, richer life. And it's a slippery slope, and it accelerates quickly. It's one of those. Many of us have relationship with partners, spouses, and from time to time those relationships have a need for a reset. We reevaluate and think and encourage some things, and we want to discourage some things that are happening in our relationship. And if that's true in our relationships with others, why not in our relationship with time? Don't we have a reset? And the two most common strategies that I see people employing that leads to stress is, the first one is the hamster in the wheel, and the other one is that I just heard you described as firefighting. We're putting out fires one after another, whatever comes up, without rhyme or reason about whether or not the next thing is in fact the best and highest use of our time. One definition of insanity is is doing the same thing, expecting a different result. So if you like that person who feels that way, take a few minutes a day to do a survey of your time, do that exercise where you audit your time and then fit it in the value fund box. 9 out of 10 times when I've done this with a client, it's very enlightening, eyebrow raising, palpitating kind of reality check, a BFO moment. Another comment on this goes to the 80-20 Pareto effect. Yeah, so there's this profanity known as perfectionism. We all agree that alcoholism is a disease, as is workaholism. And I would say to you that just as undermining as some of these things, because we strive to get everything perfect for success, or for the fear of failure that prevents us from accomplishing. And so the 80% of the value, I would say to you, very often is acquired in 20% of the effort. And the last 20% has a very sharp line of diminishing returns. The more and more we perfect, the less and less results we get. And if I can put that in different terms, so a 20-pound bottle of wine is lovely. 100 bottle of wine is not 5 times better. It may be better for sure, but most of us, that better exists in our perception of it, and there's no question, that it's 5 times better. And that's that's the one thing that you have to be managing as you're completing your work and saying, yes, this particular project requires my best, I'll give it 100%. Lots and lots of our projects would be well served with the 80%. Another comment here, many people have a reluctance to get up in front of the room because they have yet to perfect their presentation, or their reluctance to start selling because their website isn't quite perfect yet. Yeah. So let me offer a couple of thoughts on that. If anything worth doing is, well, it's worth doing badly to start with. So give yourself permission to be crappy at it as you begin. And I'm pretty sure, 99 out of 100 people on this call know how to ride a bicycle. And I'm going to ask you, have you always known how to ride a bike? And of course, all of us didn't. We learned to ride a bike and we fell a few times, skinned our knees, and we had some help from mum or dad, or someone held our bicycle seat until we figured out how to do it. And we persevered. And why did we do that? We persevered because we wanted to learn. And so if you want to become better at presenting, get up there and learn how to do it. There's no wrong answer. There's to the right people, and everyone in the audience will give you lots of support and help with positive feedback. Absolutely, anything worth doing is worth doing crappy to begin with. Okay, let's have a look. Okay, folks. Well, there doesn't appear to be any more questions, and we're coming up to time. I'm going to wrap it up there. Thanks so much for being on the webinar today. I hope you found it of value. I really hope you enjoyed it. I look forward to talking to you real soon. Bye for now.